Psalm 139, beginning at verse 6, it says this: Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. I'm reading this from the NIV. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, and your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I want to talk this morning from this thought. Questions are revealing. Questions, they are revealing. Let me begin with a confession. This topic is not my own. It is not. When I was a teenager, I just told you I'll be 62 tomorrow, right? When I was a teenager, true story, my parents made me, forced me, against my will. There are any teenagers in the room, just nod at me, because we had to go to church on a weeknight. Yeah, they forced me because it was not willing. But on a weeknight, my parents forced me to go to a revival to hear a preacher that I now know as the legendary C.A.W. Clark. If you know him, you know. I heard him one time ever, and this was his topic. I dare not utilize this topic without giving him proper credit. But please notice that 50 years later, I still remember it. That sermon, that topic never left my mind because it taught me some things about myself and a lot of other folks. Questions are revealing. Here's what we know about this psalm. It is a psalm of David. What we don't know is exactly when David wrote this. It appears that he penned this psalm sometime later in his life after life had taught him some valuable lessons. We know who David is, right? So we know that David is the giant slayer. We know that David is the king whisperer. He is the poet and the musician. He has become the king himself. David has gone head up with some of the best armies the world had to offer because they thought they could get by him because, like many others, they underestimated David. God blessed David with a skill set that was better than most. Saul killed his thousands, David his 10,000s. I submit to you that David is a bad dude. David's resume is impressive because David has both skill and ability. He has both capacity and capability. David is anointed for the things that he's done. Anybody other than me understand that David is a bad dude. He has accomplished what God has sent him to. David is, according to God, a man after his own heart. David's a bad dude because God trusts David to do things that a lot of folks can't or won't do. See, David's tasks require both guts and gumption. Yeah, David's the stuff that David does is the kind of stuff that you have to be willing to unalive folks to do. You got to be willing to do some stuff because God sent you to some stuff to be able to walk in David's shoes. He's not just any kind of guy. David is a bad dude. David has earned the respect of his enemies as well as the folks he leads. He's the poster boy for I can show you better than I can tell you. David is a bad dude, yet the text shows us a different side of David. David's questions reveal more about him than his victories ever could. And when we learn from this prayer, what we'll learn from this prayer is that he's praying a prayer. And I'll say this to you, I think I said it before. Prayer is best served raw. Don't cook your prayers. Don't make it sound pretty. Prayer is best served raw. I don't need to put no seasoning on prayer. I know we season stuff, but I don't have to season it. I don't have to make it look, sound, or taste good. Prayer is best served raw. The text is displaying for us the mind of the man. On Wednesday was Apostle Stevens who told us to mind our minds. And while we often want to talk about the wins that David has amassed, this psalm shows you the complexity of the man. Anybody other than me understand what it is to be complex? A couple of y'all should have said amen just a little bit louder. Anybody other than me understand what it is to be complicated? Anybody else is grateful that God is able to deal with my good and my, listen, I'm not one or the other. I'm all of the above. I'm complicated. Is there anybody other than me in the room who's grateful for a God who's able to deal with the kind of God that deals with my kinds of complexities? Listen, just about the time when you get used to the good of me, you find out about the bad of me. I'm not one or the other. I'm all of the above. I'm complicated. I need somebody to understand that I'm grateful for a God, because when I went in prayer, my questions told him some stuff about me. Is there anybody other than me that's grateful for a God that can deal with my complexities? In verse 6, David says that his knowledge of their relationship is too wonderful for him to understand. But the remainder of this prayer reveals what really went on in the mind of the man. It shows the places that I've really been. It shows the things that I really thought about. It shows where I've been in my head. Is there anybody other than me who's willing to consider that sometimes the questions I ask are going to reveal some things to God about me? Just the very nature of my question is going to tell God where I am. It's going to tell God what I'm thinking. It's going to tell God what I want to do, whether I do it or not. There are three things that I want you to see in the text, and we're going to get out of here. We're going to get out of here. You ready? Three things, and then I'm going to Mama's house because Mama cooked. Moms, we're grateful for y'all. I promise we're grateful for y'all because, yeah, Mom cooked. That's three things that I want you to see in the text. You ready? In the text, we'll see David's impulse. We'll see his imagination. And we'll see his intimacy with God. We'll see his impulses. We'll see his imagination, and we'll see his intimacy with God. Let's work. What we find is that in the original form of this psalm, in verses 1 through 5, you'll find that David started with the omniscience of God, the all-knowing nature of God. The psalm begins by saying, "You've searched me and you know me." And so he begins with the omniscience of God. God knows everything. He continues though in verse 7, and he shifts to the omnipotence of God. The omnipresence of God. He begins to show us that God is everywhere at all times. He shifts from the omniscience to the omnipresence, but his questions begin to reveal his realities. His questions reveal that I've considered some things that, though I just told you that this relationship is more wonderful than I can imagine, there were some points along the way that I might have considered a different route. Anybody other than me willing to admit that even though I walk with God and he walks with me and he talks with me and he tells me that I'm his own, that every now and then I want to make a left turn? Anybody willing to admit that once in a while I ain't always right? I've considered some other stuff. Dare I suggest that if my name is David, the first thing that my question reveals is my impulse. The first thing that the question reveals is my impulse. Watch verse 7. It says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence?" Wait a minute. If this thing is so wonderful, why is it that you're looking at going and fleeing? Is there anybody other than me that sees that the question is beginning to reveal some things? It makes me think that what we're seeing is that the man of God might have had some thoughts like we do. The man of God, the man after God's own heart, might have had some tendencies and impulses like we do. And maybe it is that he doesn't always want to be quite as known by God as he is. The psalm, if this psalm is written later in David's life, it might be that he's reminiscing about some things that have happened over the course of his life. And I might not have wanted to be seen. I might be telling you about some impulses that I've had over the course of time, because David has done some stuff in his life. As much as we talk about the wins, David has done some stuff in his life, and some of us really do identify with David because David has done some stuff in his life. And so maybe the impulse to flee happened after that episode with Bathsheba. I don't know. And maybe I'm revealing that somewhere along my life I had an impulse to run from you, God. Maybe it's that I had an impulse because, let me see if I can make this story short. Because in that episode with Bathsheba, David was somewhere he wasn't supposed to be. So he saw something he wasn't supposed to see. So he did something he wasn't supposed to do that had a lifelong effect on the trajectory of him and his family. Anybody other than me see why it is that I might have had an impulse to run? Because on that backside of that mess with Bathsheba, I had to deal with the prophet Nathan. And the prophet came and told me that I was a problem and God was having a problem with me. His response to this is Psalm 51. But before we get to Psalm 51, is it possible that David's impulse to flee is because I know what I did? Is it possible that his impulse to flee is because I know what I said? Is it possible that his impulse to flee is because I know how God saw me? Is it possible that his impulse to flee is because verse 1 said, "You have searched me and you know me, and so you know what I did, you know what I was thinking, you know I meant that, and now I've got to deal with the fact that I've got to deal with a God that knows me like he does." And maybe it was that my impulse was to run. But watch what Psalm 51 says. It says, "Have mercy on me, O God, according to your unfailing love, according to your great compassion, blot out my transgressions. I know what I did. Wash away all my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin." God, I might have wanted to run, but rather than to follow my impulse, wash me. I might have wanted to run. My impulse said, see if you can hide from what you did. Anybody other than me ever needed to hide from God about some stuff? For I know my transgression and my sin is always before me. When I read Psalm 51, I understand 139 a little bit better. I do. When I read 51, I understand 139 just a little bit better. Because is it possible that these are the words from somebody whose impulse said run, but whose relationship held? Is it possible that my question revealed an impulse that said, I need to get out from this. These are the words of someone who understood the magnitude of their sin. And while I wanted to run, I'm grateful that because you searched me and you know me, that you held me and you preserved me and you forgave me and you washed me and you sent me back into the fight. I might have had an impulse, but God, I'm grateful that the God I serve knows me enough and he's keeping me and he trusted me on the backside of all my mess to still call me his own. David's questions are revealing. They are. It reveals that David's most courageous moments might not have been on the battlefield. It might have been in the war room with God. Because prayer is best served raw. Because when I walked in to the prayer room with God and I prayed this prayer, he's not dealing with my victories. That's what y'all clap about. God's dealing with my humanity. I need somebody to understand that point one is that the question reveals the possibility of an impulse. But beyond that, the question reveals David's imagination. Watch the text. I'm still in verse 7. It says, where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? Before David's imagination takes him to all the places the text is going to show us, notice that he names what he's trying to escape. I'm trying to escape your spirit and your presence. Let's do our homework. Spirit is the Hebrew word ruach. And presence is the Hebrew word panim. The spirit, the ruach of God, is God in motion. It is the breath of God. It is God working. It is God actively present. And so the question becomes, where can I go to escape what God is doing? Where can I go to escape how God is moving? And so then the presence is the panim of God. It is God's face. One is his movement. The other is his face. It is, the panim is his direct, personal, intimate gaze turned specifically toward you. So the question becomes, where can I go to escape God looking at me? Where is it that the questions get revealing now, don't they? David's imagination in prayer might be triggered, though, by the experience he had with God at Ziklag. Anybody remember the episode at Ziklag? Quick review. David was living among the Philistines, and the Philistines were the enemies of God. The Philistine commanders rejected him, which was actually God's mercy keeping him from fighting against God. And so they've rejected him, and David is now humbled by the rejection, and he's humbled because he was out of position, but he's further humbled when he gets back to the camp and he finds that everything got burned down and his people have been taken captive. And so beyond my impulses, maybe my experiences are informing God that my question that's being revealed to God is where my imagination has been. In my imagination, in my prayer, I'm trying to tell God that I remember the times when I turned away from you. I remember the times when I ran from the assignment. I remember the times when I aligned with folks that didn't have nothing to do with you. I remember the times when I was well out of position. I remember the time when I failed to listen to your voice and I didn't want to see your face. I remember the times, God, that though you anointed me over all my brothers, I remember the times that my imagination took me to some other places and I acted on what I thought up. I need somebody to understand that my imagination will take me places that I shouldn't act on, but every now and then I do. But once I learned what my imagination does, Watch what it says in verse 8. It says, if I go up to the heavens, you're there. And if I make my bed in the depths, you're there. And if I rise on the wings of the dawn or settle on the far side of the sea, even there, your hand will guide me and your right hand will hold me fast. David's question revealed that after all the things that I imagined, after my imagination went buck wild, after all the escape routes that I found my way through, what I did not understand was the one I needed was you. What I did not understand is that the one I was trying to get away from is the one who ultimately rescued me. I need somebody to understand that my impulses did one thing, my imagination took me somewhere else, but at the end of the day, there was nowhere that my imagination could take me where I did not run into God. There was nowhere that my imagination could take me that God couldn't find me and deal with me. There was nowhere that his right hand wouldn't guide me and his righteous right hand wouldn't hold even when I didn't want to be held. Is there anybody other than me who needs to understand that my impulses went one way, my imagination went another, but God stayed the same? Is there anybody other than me? Questions revealing. It revealed that my relationship with God brings me face to face with the one who loves me enough to stop me from running from him. Because the question revealed the width of David's imagination, but it revealed the depth of God's love, the lengths he's willing to go for me, the things he's willing to forgive me of, the things he's willing to bring me back from. The one I ran from was the one who would rescue me. And this time, he'd send me back into the fight for him. Even though I messed up, I'm grateful for a God that for every extreme I could imagine, you were there. For every place my mind took me, you were there. If I rose to the heavens, we knew you were there. But if I made my bed in the depths, I found out you were there. And your gaze held. Anybody other than me grateful that he's enough God to handle not just what I imagined, but what I acted on. Point one, the question revealed an impulse. Point two, the question reveals David's imagination. But here's where I'll wrap it up. The question reveals an intimacy with God. Watch the text starting at verse 11. It says, if I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Let me make sure that I do not breach the integrity of this text. This psalm is David's conversation with God. Make sure that I don't lose the integrity of the text. This is a snapshot of David's thought life. And his conclusion in this prayer is that God is good. That's the integrity of the text. Verse 11 puts his final thought destination at the dark. He's gone to a whole bunch of places. I've gone into the heavens. I've gone down into the depths. I've done the wings of the morning. I've been to all these places in my imagination, but his final destination is the dark itself. He has considered all the places he could hide from God, but his final thought isn't a destination, it is darkness itself. Rather than trying to go somewhere to flee from your face, how about I just turn the lights off so you can't see me? Anybody other than me understand that one? Anybody other than me? There's some folk in here. Listen, I'd just rather turn the lights off, God. Since I found you everywhere, my mind said I could go. Maybe if I just turn the lights off. He says, surely darkness would hide me. He says, surely that darkness that you hovered over in Genesis 1 would hide the visual of the stuff I'm trying to keep from you. Surely the darkness will hide the musings of my mind. Surely the darkness can cover up the dirt of my deeds. Surely, but there's a problem. Anybody want to know what the problem is? Seems to me that I recall that in creation, God was not hindered by that darkness. And so the problem that I'm having is that everywhere I've tried to go, including the dark, does not get me the escape that I'm looking for. I seem to recall that darkness was not a problem to God, that God wasn't hindered by the darkness, and God began to speak before the lights got turned on. Is there anybody other than me who's grateful for a God who knew what I was going to think before I thought it and dealt with it so that he could be in not just in the heights and the depths, but he's in the darkness? Is there anybody other than me who needs to tell their darkness that God is there? Is there anybody other than me who needs to make sure that when the darkness decides that it wants to envelop me, that I need you to know that I ain't the only one in here? Surely the darkness will hide me, but creation suggests otherwise. I need somebody to understand darkness can't hide me from God. Ask the light. I need somebody to understand David's final admission, his final admission in prayer. It doesn't hold up. And so we find the why in verse 13. And so he's been to all these places. He's followed his impulses. He's followed his imagination. But in the intimacy, you find out that verse 13 says, for you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Dare I suggest to you that the questions have revealed the things that David needed to say to God about himself. Anybody ever been in prayer and you just needed to come clean about some stuff? Anybody ever been in prayer and listen, I'm not trying to hide this no more, God. What did I tell you? Prayer is best served. And so I needed to go in my prayer closet and say what I meant. I needed to go in my prayer closet and tell on myself. I needed to go in my prayer closet and make sure that though God knows everything, I'm admitting it to him, because if I admit it to him, I allow him to deal with it. Is there anybody other than me who's now understands that the questions have done their job, and the questions have revealed my secrets, and the questions have revealed the truth about my heart and the truth about my mind? Because there's some stuff I ain't never gonna tell you. There's some stuff you ain't never gonna know about me. But when I get in my prayer closet, there's an intimacy that exists that I can tell it to God raw. Is there anybody other than me that understands that I followed my impulses and I followed my imagination? But the reason why I love God like I do is because there's an intimacy that exists that y'all can't see between me and God. I said I'm keeping the integrity of the text because I need you to know that this is a prayer he's praying. This is something he's saying to God. This is where I've been. This is what I thought. This is how I felt. This is what I wanted to do. This is where I've been. I'm being honest, God, because you can't deal with me until I show you the reality of myself. I need somebody to understand the intimacy. Says, you created my inmost being. Last homework assignment. Inmost. It's the deepest, most interior, most hidden part of a thing. The inmost is the part that's the furthest from the surface. You didn't hear me. I said, the inmost part of me. And it's the deepest, most interior, most hidden part of a thing. It's the part that's the furthest from the surface. So every one of you who knows the surface of me, God bless you. But there's some intimacy that exists because what he created is a part of me that's so far from the surface that not only can you not see it, every now and then I can't either. I need somebody to understand that there's an intimacy that if you let God be God, he'll put some things in you and he can go to a place that you don't even know he created. He can go to a place and speak to a part of you that will cause the rest of you to fall in line. Why did I not follow my impulses? Why did I not get lost in my imaginations? Because there's an intimacy that God, listen, I would have done what I wanted to do, but his righteous right hand held me. It kept me. It stopped me. It held the relationship together because there's an intimacy that exists in me that God has. There's an access point. There's an access point that God has. It's the furthest from the surface. You knit me together. You know the inmost part of me. You know the stuff they don't know. You know what hurts me. You know what triggers me. You know the intimate parts of me. You know that stuff that we ain't gonna talk about, that me and God ain't never gonna say to you in public. You know every fiber of my being. So when verse 6 said, such knowledge is too wonderful for me, anybody now know what it is that he was saying? That there's a part of me that is too wonderful for me to consider that. You know me so well, and you've been everywhere that I thought I wanted to go, everywhere I went to, and everywhere I thought about. And while all of that was happening, you were dealing with a place in me that's too intimate for anybody else. The questions of my life have done their work. The questions of my life have led me to the revelation, because questions are revealing. And so the questions that I took to God in prayer led to a revelation of who God is to me. The questions were revealing. They revealed my impulses and they revealed my imagination, but they revealed that level of intimacy. But can I go back to where I started? I started when I said 50 years ago, I heard this as a sermon. I heard the legendary C.A.W. Clark, if you know, you know. I heard him say in a very general like voice that questions are revealing. And for all these years, that stuck with me. I keep saying I'll be 62 tomorrow. I was less than 15 when I heard this. And so 50 years ago, I did not want to go to church. And 50 years ago, I didn't feel like hearing a sermon on a weekday. I was saved, but not quite that much. But I need somebody to understand that little did I know that God set me up 50 years ago for a sermon that I would preach some 50 years later, because God sent somebody in the early part of my life to describe what I was going to need in the later part of my life to show me how to do what he was going to ultimately call me to. Is there anybody other than me? If you don't believe in the intimacy of God, he'll put some things before you that you'll be able to pull back out 50 years from now, and you'll be able to see where God was in your life way back then. He'll make somebody do something to you that caused me to be in a place where I didn't see something I wasn't supposed to see. I saw something I was supposed to see. They made me go to church. They made me hear that sermon, but they could not make me remember it. That was God, because there's an intimacy that he knew he needed to have with me 50 years ago. So he told it to me a long time ago, so I could tell it to you now. I need somebody to understand that the questions, they're revealing. I've learned some things based on the questions that I asked God. Anybody, go back in your mind, those questions. Why have I not? Go back in your mind. Why did you let? Go back in your mind. How come I'm not? why did you, anybody remember the questions? Listen, I'm not telling you not to ask those questions. I think you ought to ask them all. Because again, prayer is best served. I need it. Listen, every question that pops up in your mind, because the question is going to reveal something to you about you. But dare I suggest to you that what the questions revealed wasn't just what was going on with David. What the questions revealed is who God was. Is there anybody other than me? The last thing before I sit down and go to mom's house and eat that smothered steak, I need somebody to understand that in addition to what David learned about David, David learned some things about God. He learned that when he asks the question, God has already gone before him and inhabited the place where he is, so that there is no way for you to miss me when you go wherever you go. It showed a God who knew the questions before I asked them, and he let me ask them, and he let me walk through everything that he needed me to see before he showed me himself. Is there anybody else who understands that the questions were revealing? They revealed a God who was unwilling to let me outrun his spirit, to let me outrun his breath. He's unwilling to let me get out from under who he is. It revealed a God who's unwilling to let me escape his face and escape his gaze, not just because he needs me to feel the guilt of it all, because he needs me to see the love in it all. Is there anybody other than me who's ever been in trouble and your mama's face looked at you like, you know me and I'm with you and I know you're in trouble, but the reason why you haven't failed and sank and everything else that went wrong is because mama looked at me and said, keep standing, and mama looked at me and said, keep swimming, and mama looked at me and said, keep walking. The same God who taught my mama how to do it is the originator of the intimacy it takes for me to trust you enough to keep looking at you, so I keep walking. Is there anybody other than me who's grateful that my questions revealed a God who was willing to be everything I needed in the times I didn't know I needed it? Willing to be everything I needed when I didn't know what I needed. Questions were revealing because it didn't just reveal where I was. If you let your questions loose, they're a roadmap to where God is. Come on, let's stand.